The private dining room glowed with birthday warmth, candles, laughter, and the clink of glasses. Carolyn Whitmore, 70, sat at the head of the table, surrounded by family and oldest friends. Halfway through the toast, her son Robert stood abruptly. He pulled a manila folder from his jacket and set it beside her wine glass.
Mom, my sisters and I need you to sign over financial control tonight. These are power of attorney papers. If you refuse, you can find your own way home.
The table went silent. Every fork froze midair. The grandchildren stared, and then Carolyn did something no one expected. She smiled. A small, closed-mouth smile that didn't reach her eyes that were locked on Robert with surgical calm.
I see. Would you excuse me for just a moment? I need to make one phone call.
Her voice was steady, almost pleasant. She folded her napkin, rose from her chair, and smoothed the front of her burgundy blouse. Without another glance at the folder or her son, she walked away from the table. The stunned silence followed her into the dim corridor. At the end of the hallway, she paused. From her evening purse, she withdrew her phone and dialed a number by heart. As the phone rang, she kept walking, her heels clicking on marble. A woman who had prepared for this exact moment for 18 long months. In a quiet alcove, she pressed the phone to her ear and waited. In his wood-paneled office, Frank Morrison saw her name flash and answered at once. The screen glowed with his contact. Frank Morrison, the one person who knew her countermove.
Frank, it's happening. They handed me the papers tonight.
I expected that. The legal instruments are sealed. Say the word.
I said it 18 months ago. Execute everything.
She hung up, slipped the phone away, and allowed one slow exhale before straightening her brooch. 18 months earlier, in this same home office, she had no idea of the betrayal waiting for her. That afternoon, she had opened her bank statement to reconcile the month's expenses, and there it was, a small electronic debit, $300, with the notation loan from Robert. Carolyn stared at the entry, frowning. She had never loaned Robert money without a paper trail. She remembered his smug grin as he had insisted she switched to paperless statements. How convenient for him. She had watched his hands fly over the keys, trusting him implicitly. Now she felt sick. A second transfer appeared the next week. $500, marked reimbursement.
Reimbursement for what? She hadn't authorized any expenses.
Then a third, $1,200. The total was now $2,000. She printed the statements, highlighted the debits, and locked the papers away. Her fingers were cold. She looked at the old photograph of Robert as a boy, her heart splintering.
I won't confront him yet. I need to see how far he will go.
She would watch, wait, and prepare, just as her husband had taught her. This was only the beginning. Over the following weeks, she checked the accounts every Monday morning. The pattern was unmistakable. Small transfers, always a day or two after Robert visited, and now Diane's name appeared on a routing number.
Diane, too? Both of my children are stealing from me.
One afternoon, she spotted them on a park bench, heads bent together. Robert gestured sharply. Diane nodded, looking frightened. She stayed hidden, her car windows up, watching the strangers her children had become. That night, she sat alone with the old photograph. Robert as a boy, grinning, no greed in his eyes yet.
I raised them with love, and they see me as nothing but a wallet.
She let the tears fall. Then she wiped them away with the back of her hand and drew a long, unsteady breath.
They won't take what's mine. I'll protect myself. No family meeting, no drama, just quiet action.
She would build a fortress they didn't know existed. The first brick was about to be laid. and it had a name. Frank Morrison. She sat down across his polished desk and placed her handbag firmly beside her.
Frank, I think my children are stealing from me. I need your eyes on these numbers.
She slid the highlighted bank statements across the wood. Frank scanned them, his expression darkening.
Carolyn, these are systematic. If they're willing to commit theft, they'll escalate.
They might try for power of attorney next. I am terrified they'll succeed.
If they can make you appear incompetent, a court might grant it. You need an irrevocable trust. It's a legal wall they can't breach.
An irrevocable trust. Could I really do this to my own children?
They forced your hand, Carolyn. You are protecting the legacy your husband built.
Draw up the papers, Frank. Everything goes into that trust.
Frank made a note on his legal pad. The first steel beam of her fortress was now in place. 2 weeks later, Carolyn asked her cousin Catherine to meet her at the legal firm, the one person she still trusted unconditionally.
Catherine, I have to tell you something. Robert and Diane have been taking money from my accounts, and I believe they won't stop.
Oh, Carolyn, number. How could they? After everything you've done for them.
I am setting up an irrevocable trust to protect everything. I want you to be my co-trustee, Catherine.
Could she really block her own children from their inheritance? But the pain in Carolyn's eyes was too real. I'll do it, Carolyn. Whatever it takes to stop them.
Frank joined them in the conference room, laying out a draft document. The structure was airtight.
The trust gives you lifetime control, Carolyn. Then the assets pass to a board, not your children. They get nothing unless you explicitly direct otherwise.
She read every line. Then she picked up the pen and signed her name on the preliminary agreement. Catherine signed beside her. The old cousins exchanged a long, quiet look. The wall was getting higher. Over the following months, Carolyn moved every liquid asset into the trust. Then came the hardest act, the house. She sold it to the trust for a nominal sum, a quiet transaction recorded at the county office. No one else was told. A discreet moving truck idled in the driveway one morning. Crew loaded her personal boxes while neighbors barely glanced. When the last box was gone, she walked through the vacant rooms. Her fingers traced the hallway wallpaper.
40 years in these walls, and now I am shutting out my own children.
Frank called her into his office 2 weeks later. He waited until she sat, then slid a leather portfolio toward her.
Everything is sealed, Carolyn. House, accounts, investments, all locked inside the trust. They can't touch a single dollar.
It's done. I've built a fortress they can never breach.
She lifted the portfolio, heavy with notarized signatures. It felt like the weight of 18 months of secrets. She locked the portfolio in her personal safe and waited, prepared for the moment her children would finally strike. In the weeks before her birthday, Carolyn rehearsed the words she had saved for 18 months.
If you try to take control, the house was sold to a trust. The joint account has $312.
She watched her own face in the mirror. That smile would terrify them. She met Frank one final time at a quiet hotel lounge to confirm the legal fortress.
I have never seen a more legally sound arrangement. They can sue, but they will lose.
She nodded, the last doubt dissolving. She wrote the key phrases on a small card and tucked it into her purse. She crossed off the final day on the calendar. Her birthday was circled, day of reckoning. That smile, she practiced it until it was automatic, cold enough to freeze her own son. Frank had seen her resolve. So had Catherine. Now only the moment remained. 3 days before her birthday, Carolyn asked Robert to meet her at the park. She wanted to gauge how far he would go.
How are things, Robert? Anything you need help with?
No, Mom. But you might get a nice surprise at your birthday dinner.
He's planning the ambush, just as I suspected. Surprises are always welcome. By the way, have you thought about your inheritance lately?
You've always been fair, Mom. Why would I worry about that now?
She saw the lie flicker behind his eyes. He was counting on something she would never hand over. The conversation ended with empty pleasantries. Robert stood and walked away, whistling. Carolyn walked to her car, her heart cold as stone. That was the moment she knew he would go through with it. There would be no reconciliation. Only the reckoning she had painstakingly prepared. The night before her 70th birthday, Carolyn sat at her vanity, the leather portfolio open beside her. She had reviewed the trust documents so many times the pages were soft at the corners.
Everything is in place. Frank has copies. Catherine has copies. The joint account holds $312.
She fastened her pearl earrings, then pinned the antique brooch to the collar of the burgundy blouse. Her hand hovered over the note card with the key phrases. She knew them by heart now.
The house sold, the account emptied, the trust sealed. I have waited a year and a half for tomorrow.
She stood and took one last look in the mirror. The woman who looked back was no longer a victim. She slid the portfolio and the certificate copies into her evening bag. Then she switched off the light, and in the darkness, she allowed herself a whisper. The next evening, her children would spring their trap, and Carolyn would smile. Carolyn walked back into the private dining room. Every head turned. She moved to her seat with unhurried grace, smoothing the front of her burgundy blouse.
Well, did you make your little call?
Carolyn didn't answer. She lifted her wine glass, swirled the deep red, and took a slow sip.
Robert, she began, but Robert silenced her with a sharp gesture.
The silence stretched, thick as velvet. Then Carolyn set her glass down with a soft clink.
You wanted me to sign over financial control tonight. I considered it.
Robert's eyes flickered with triumph. He leaned forward, fingers drumming on the white tablecloth.
But first, I have a few questions for you.
The table went dead silent. Even the servers stopped moving. The trap was no longer Robert's.
Let's start with something simple. Robert, how much do you think the family home is worth?
I don't know. Maybe 800,000? Diane, what was the last appraisal?
Robert, I am not sure. The county records aren't clear, and Mom never shared the latest assessment.
And the investment portfolio? What's the total value of the retirement accounts?
It's in a trust, isn't it? I've never seen the exact numbers, but it's substantial, I am sure.
Yes, in a trust. But you don't know how much is there, do you? You never asked. You only saw what you could take.
Robert's jaw tightened. Diane's fingers curled around her napkin until her knuckles paled.
You handed me a folder and thought you understood my world. You never even glanced at the records you claimed to protect.
That smile, terrifyingly calm, widened a fraction. The table could almost feel the cold coming off her. The family exchanged panicked glances. The ground beneath their coup had vanished with each measured word. Carolyn reached into her evening purse and pulled out a folded bank statement. She held it up so the entire table could see the bold figure. $312.14.
What is that? That can't be. Robert snatched the paper, his eyes scanning the lines.
He stared at the joint account balance. Over 30,000 had once sat there. Now it was $312.
That's impossible. There was more than 30,000 in that account. Mom, what did you do?
Carolyn took the statement back and laid it flat on the white tablecloth. Her fingers rested beside the number like a punctuation mark.
As of 18 months ago, every significant transfer into this account stopped. You must have noticed.
You closed it? Without telling us?
I didn't close it. I simply relocated the funds. What's left is $312. That's all you have access to.
Robert's face shifted from confusion to cold rage. Diane's lower lip began to tremble uncontrollably. The guests gasped softly. Somewhere a wine glass tipped, but no one moved to catch it. Carolyn did not pause. From her bag, she drew a second document, this one heavier, official.
This is the deed to the house. It was sold last spring to a trust.
Sold? What are you talking about? You can't sell the house without telling us.
Mom, no, you wouldn't. Diane's voice broke, tears spilling down her cheeks.
You will need to vacate within 90 days. The trust's attorneys will send formal notice.
You can't do that. It's my father's house.
He shot to his feet, fists planted on the tablecloth. The silverware rattled.
Your father, she said, her voice a scalpel, would have wanted me to protect it, and I have.
She placed the deed flat beside the bank statement. Two pieces of paper that dismantled an inheritance. The room seemed to shrink. No one dared to look at Robert now. Carolyn reached into her evening purse one last time and withdrew a thick document bound with a gold seal.
This is the irrevocable trust, co-signed by Frank Morrison and Catherine Hoyt. Every investment, every savings bond, the proceeds from the house, locked inside, irrevocably.
You planned this for months?
18 months. I've been ready for this dinner longer than you've been planning it.
Diane let out a ragged sob, half horror, half shame. Guests at nearby tables turned in alarm. Robert's face twisted, fury and disbelief, but the fire in his eyes guttered. He stumbled backward into his chair. The trust document sat on the white tablecloth, like a monument. No one at the table could speak. Carolyn's smile had not wavered. She had waited 1.5 years for this exact silence. The room exhaled. The power had shifted so completely that even the candles seemed to burn lower.
How could you do this to us, your own children? We're your family, Mom.
You came here tonight to steal my independence. You gave me an ultimatum. I simply accepted it.
Diane flinched as if struck. Her tears fell onto the white tablecloth, staining it with dark spots.
You'll die alone. You know that. When you are old and helpless, you'll regret this.
I'd rather die alone than be made a prisoner by my own son.
Robert's mouth opened, but no sound came. The insult had landed, and he had nothing left.
Mom, please. We can find another way. Don't cut us out like this.
There is no other way. You forced my hand 18 months ago, and I simply played my cards.
The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Only Diane's quiet sobs punctuated the air. Everyone at that table understood. Carolyn Whitmore had not simply defended her fortune. She had declared war, and she had already won.
You brought these papers for me to sign. I don't need them. Everything's already done.
With 2 manicured fingers, she slid the manila folder across the polished wood toward her son. Robert stared at the folder, his face pale. His hands remained pinned to his sides.
Go on. Take it. You can keep it as a souvenir.
He did not move. The folder lay untouched like a live grenade. Around the table, guests held their breaths. A grandfather clock chimed the half-hour. The folder sat exactly where she had placed it, inches from his untouched wine glass.
You wanted control. This is the only thing you'll be controlling tonight.
Robert's hand, trembling, edged toward the folder. Then he pulled it back, as if scorched. Carolyn emptied her glass in one swallow and turned to face the remaining guests. The reckoning was complete. A server refilled her glass without being asked. Carolyn rose, the candlelight catching the pearls at her ears.
I was going to make a toast to my 70 years, but instead, I'll toast to clarity, to knowing exactly who deserves your trust and who doesn't.
She held Robert's gaze for a long, scalding second. then took a slow sip from the glass. Somewhere at the table, a guest's glass trembled. Then, one by one, a few hesitant hands lifted their own flutes. The quiet clinks of crystal filled the silence. A toast to a birthday or a coronation, no one could say. Diane could not lift her glass. Robert's hands remained flat on the table, knuckles white.
70 years have taught me when to hold on and when to let go. Tonight, I let go of what never truly belonged to me.
She raised the glass higher, then drank again, finishing what was left in one final, deliberate swallow. And when she turned to gesture toward the kitchen doors, everyone understood the cake was coming. The kitchen doors swung open, and 2 waiters wheeled in the towering birthday confection. 70 candles blazed atop it. The guests, desperate to break the tension, burst into applause. But Robert and Diane sat motionless. The cake came to rest in front of Carolyn. The 70 flames flickered like a small, defiant constellation.
Every candle represents a year of watching, learning, and waiting.
She leaned closer, the firelight dancing in her calm eyes. No one dared to interrupt. The room dimmed. The only light came from those 70 tiny torches. Carolyn straightened, her silhouette framed by flame. She looked at no one in particular. A child whispered, "Grandma, make a wish." But Carolyn's wish had already come true. She took one long breath, the kind that could extinguish not just candles, but entire plans. She leaned forward, cheeks hollowed and blue. One long, steady breath swept across all 70 flames. The candles guttered, leaned, then surrendered. Every flame died in the draft of her resolution. Thin smoke rose, spiraling, like a final exhale from the room. No one moved. A single wick flickered back to life. She cupped the air and extinguished it with a whisper of breath. Darkness swallowed the table. Then, a strangled gasp somewhere to her left. Carolyn straightened, her silhouette regal against the dying white smoke. She smoothed the front of her burgundy blouse, unshaken. The brooch gleamed. The table sat frozen, 70 dark wicks, smoldering like spent ambitions. She lifted her chin and looked not at her children, but at her friends. The silence was hers, bought with 18 months of preparation. The smoke spoke for her. The lights rose. Carolyn picked up her evening purse, the one that still held the trust copy, and straightened her jacket.
Thank you all for sharing this evening with me. Please enjoy the cake.
The servers began slicing the confection, but no one reached for a plate. Robert and Diane remained motionless.
You can stay for dessert, or you can leave. It doesn't matter anymore.
Mom, please, don't go like this.
Good night, children.
She touched the antique brooch at her collar, then turned. Her silver bob caught the light as she walked away. Robert did not turn his head. Diane collapsed into her chair, sobbing into her hands. The door swung shut behind her. The manila folder still lay untouched on the white tablecloth. Carolyn Whitmore walked into the cool evening, leaving her children behind, not with anger, but with the quiet certainty of a woman who had already won. She walked alone through the restaurant lobby, past the marble fountain. The night air hit her face like a reward. She paused on the curb, letting the city's distant hum settle around her. For a long moment, she simply breathed. And then, for the first time that entire evening, her smile reached her eyes. It was no longer the rehearsed mask. It was genuine, a quiet, earned thing, held close. She tilted her face toward the stars. The weight of 18 months lifted. This was the smile that had prepared for 18 months. The smile of a woman who knew exactly who she was. She had not simply survived their ambush. She had outplanned, outwaited, and outclassed it. In the end, it was not revenge that moved Carolyn Whitmore, but clarity, and clarity had never looked so serene. The smile held. It would hold for a long time. Freeze frame on that smile. The smile of a woman who had already won. Fade to black.